Good evening, everybody. So let me know if you have any questions, but let's get started with today's class. In today's session, in the previous session, we talked about handling exceptions. Exceptions are nothing but errors which are generated, and it's always a good idea to handle the exceptions. So what we'll do today is to see how we can handle exceptions which are our own programmer generated exceptions. Let's say, for example, we'll define the exception and then we'll deal with the exception. Let's say, for example, um, let's talk about employee table and then deal with some exceptions during that. So first of all, what I want to do is, let us say, for example, let me declare, okay, let me say declare, okay, begin and end. These are the few things we need, right? So first of all, what I want to do is I want to figure out what is the maximum salary in the employee table. Okay. So, and when I get that max salary, I want to store it in a data type, which will be same as employee table percentile employee dot salary percentile type, right? So instead of salary, I think it is sal. Okay. Let's see how to do this. Okay. So next thing we want to know is what is the max salary, okay, into max underscore sal variable from EMP table. Okay. So that will tell us what is the maximum salary. Now let's just display it for debug purpose. Let's see if we are able to find out. Okay. And as soon as we want to write the dbms output dot put underscore line. Hold on 1 second. Let's get rid of this. We will do a set server output on. Don't forget that. And then we'll do dbms underscore output dot put underscore line. And we'll just display max salary is okay something. Okay. Now concatenate it with to care of this max underscore sal variable. Okay. So when I run this, it will run and give us the output. Okay. So now let us say, for example, if the maximum salary is less than 8,000, we'll do something. If it is more than to 8,000, then we'll do something else. Okay. So that is our way of, that is what we want to do in the logic. Okay. So for example, here we know that the maximum salary is 7,300. If, okay, max underscore sal is greater than or equal to 8,000, okay, then we would like to do something. So let's say, for example, if, then, and how does it go? Else and if. Okay, so those are the things we need, right? So here we'll say if it is greater than 8,000, then what we want to do is we want to, let's say if it is greater than 8,000, we want to do something. For now, I don't know what to do. Okay, I'll just say null. But let's say if it is not 8,000, then we'll figure out what is the difference and we'll increase the salary of the person who is getting max. So what we need to do is, first of all, sal underscore increase, okay, should be same as this data type. And because we know that the salary is not 8,000, so what we'll do is we'll say how much we have to increment, right? Sal underscore inc is assigned as, okay. So let me increase this so you can see more of your code. Okay. What is the difference? 8,000 minus what is the max we found out? Okay. So that is 7,300 in the beginning. Okay. Now what is the So I would like to go give another extra 100. Let's say, for example, we know that the difference is 700. I want to give one more 100 extra. Okay, $100 extra salary. So now what we'll do, we'll figure out how much is the increment we have to give. Okay, so this is the increment. Increment salary is what is the sal underscore inc, right? So that is the sal underscore inc. Now what we'll do, if we clear this screen and run it again, okay? So here you can see the current maximum salary is 7,300, and how much we should give to make it 8,000 more than 8,000 is we have to give him $800. Okay, so let's actually not give $100 more. We'll give only $1 extra so that it actually violates this particular rule of more than 8,000. Okay, so then if we run this, okay, hold on 1 second. We have to not select anything and then run. Okay, so let me clear the screen and run this. And now you know you have to give $701. Okay, now so far so good, right? So what we'll do here is we'll say okay, how do I comment something out? By doing this, sorry, dash dash. Okay, that is a comment out. Now let's say, for example, here what we'll do, update emp table, set, okay, sal equal to sal plus, how much is the increment we are giving? Salary increment is what we calculated, where, okay, hold on 1 second. Okay, so so let's see what what we have to do here is, okay, we have to figure out who is getting this maximum salary, right? Sal equal to who is getting the max salary. So let's say, for example, salary update should be given to select what is the max salary from employee table. Okay, so that is your subquery. So now we are using a lot of things here, like we are using some aggregate functions, we are putting it in subqueries, we are doing some updates, all that stuff. Okay, so now oh, so here there is a small bug. Okay, okay, so here, well, there is no bug. First of all, we are trying to figure out what is the maximum salary. That will tell us it is 7,300. So whoever has 7,300 will get this increment. Okay, so that looks okay. Now if I run this once, and also remember, before ending the whole thing, you have to do a commit just to save the changes. Okay, so when I run this, so for example, let me clear this and run. And also what I'll do, I'll duplicate this particular window so we can start another SQL window. Let me see where I can do that. I always forget this. Let's see, right click and open new worksheet. Okay, so now select star from employee, order by salary, descending order. Okay, sal, descending order, and then when I run this, basically it'll put the maximum salary guy on the top, so we know who is getting that and what is the maximum salary. Now if I run this, maximum salary will become $8,001. Okay, because the logic we wrote inside will take care of that update. Okay, so whatever here happened, like the command finished, let's run this again and you can see the salary became 8,001. Okay, now let's say, for example, maximum salary is already greater than or equal to 8,000. So if I rerun this, okay, also we want to do one more thing here is what is the max salary is being displayed. Okay, so we don't have to do anything. We can run this any number of times. Now this particular update will not happen because we already reached this condition. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to define an exception. Okay, and I will show you what I'm trying to do here. We'll define an exception. Now how do you declare? So any variable, like you have to specify the variable name. Okay, max sal reached. Okay, so let's say for example that is your data type. I mean, sorry, this is the variable. And what is this? It's a exception. Okay, now exception is a special data type. It's just like any other number or varchar. Here it is a exception. Now what we want to do is, because now we defined this as exception, we can handle it. Okay, so in this case here we'll say exception section. Remember exception section? What we can do here is we can say when others, okay, when others then do something, right? When others do something, what is that we want to do is, let's say dbms underscore output underscore put underscore line will say, okay, here this is a semicolon, will say unknown error occurred. Okay, now what will happen is if we run this code, nothing is really going to happen because we are not raising any exception or anything. Okay, so if we run this, let's say for example we run it, it just looks normal, there is no exception, so it never executed this code. Okay, but what if we want to raise, okay, so for example here, remember when the maximum salary is more than 8,000, we are not doing anything. What we want to do is, instead of just saying, just normally exiting the whole program, we'll say raise. Okay, raise this programmer defined exception. This is our, we defined this exception and we are raising it. Okay, and now let us look at this, the way it will run. So for example, if we clear this and run it, it says unknown error occurred. Okay, and remember this particular dbms output is even before the error, so that output is being displayed. Okay, so that is no problem. But as soon as we got this raise error, okay, so it immediately shows that there is error. Now, how do we actually handle this? Let's say, for example, just like no data found and other exceptions, what we can do is when our exception, then do something, right? Here, what we'll do, we'll print something which we already know. Okay, so for example, salary is already at maximum. Okay, something like that. Now what will happen is if we run this code, we are actually doing all the things which we need to do to handle our exception. Okay, so what I want to show you is here we declared an exception. Okay, and we raised the exception because this is not a system defined exception. We have to raise it, and that way we know what we are raising for what condition. This is our own business logic. And then we are also handling it by writing this, sorry, by writing this when clause, when this do this something else. Okay, do something to handle that error. Okay, now let's say for example, whenever this error occurs, we want to decrease the salary. Okay, we don't want to give uh, maximum salary, we want to always keep a difference of 500, let's say. Okay, then in that case we have to reduce that salary, right? So what we'll do here, we'll say for example update emp table, and let's say we'll not calculate the maximum whatever we have to decrease. What we'll do is just minus 500, we'll just decrease it. Okay, and commit these changes. Okay, now what it is committing is only whatever happens in between here is committed. So now if we run this, what will happen is The maximum salary, even though it shows this maximum salary reached, okay, if you go back and look at your table, it actually decreased by 500. Okay. So obviously now what we did is with all this logic, let me show you the full logic now. Okay. So let's close this output completely. Now what we did in here is we used all the things we learned so far for handling exceptions and also the other type and other stuff. Okay. So most importantly, what we did is we declared an exception. We raised an exception based on our logic, and then we handled that exception. Okay. So we did everything what is required for an exception to declare and handle it. So this is how you would do a programmer defined exception, or basically how you handle the exception on your own. Okay. So this is one of the programs which is very important to know how to write our own exceptions and handle them. Okay. So if you don't have any questions, I want to actually show you something with cursors. So what we'll do is here, if you look at select star from, let's say DEPT, okay, what we'll do is we will display all these things in a programmatic way. We'll run through the cursors and we'll use cursors to do that. Okay. I will first explain what are cursors and why we need them and all that stuff. Okay. No questions. Okay. So let's switch to Notepad here and say what is a cursor. Okay. So cursor is to handle rows in the database, in the table, basically rows, and we can process them one by one. Okay. Cursor will be used to process data row by row programmatically. Obviously, we are going to write PL SQL. So first of all, what involves what is involved to have a cursor and all that? Okay. So how do you do the cursors is, first of all, there are two types of cursors. I just want to say implicit cursors, and these are system automatically writes and uses. Okay. Now explicit cursors are our programs. Okay. So we are going to deal with explicit cursors. Implicit cursors, we don't even know. System automatically defines them, automatically uses them and closes them and all that stuff. Explicit cursors is what we write as programmers. We are going to write some PLSQL program using cursors. And what do we do to use it is we have to first declare a cursor. Okay. Then in the program, we are going to open that cursor. Okay. Then we have to fetch data, fetch from cursor. Okay. Or fetch data. Let's just do fetch data, and then use the data for something, right? You will do something with the data, and then once you're done with the data, what you'll do is you will close the cursor. Okay. So just like you opened the cursor here, you close the cursor. So closing cursor is where it basically takes care of releasing the memory used by it and all that stuff. Now it's always a good idea to close it. If you don't close, it basically creates a lot of memory leaks, and your memory will be used up. So it's always a good idea to close the cursor. So how do we do all this? So first of all, what we'll do, we'll just clean this up. And what we'll do is we'll just remove all this. We'll remove the exception section completely. We don't need it right now. We are focusing on the cursor itself. Now here our task is basically to display programmatically. We'll take all the rows from the DEPT table and display them on screen. Okay. So that is our programmatic code we'll use. Okay. First of all, what is the cursor? Cursor name. This is how we declare it. Cursor cursor name. So see the difference here. So far, when we declared, say for example, a number, what we did was a was the variable name and what is the data type came later on. But here, when we say cursor, the keyword cursor comes first. That is the data type, cursor name. Okay. So let's say DEPT underscore cursor. That is our cursor name. Now we'll say, hold on one second. I will just capitalize some of these things. Cursor name is, okay. Now we'll say select star. It is generally a good idea to write what columns you're bringing. DEPTNO, comma, DName, comma, location, okay, from DEPT. Now order by, let's use something like DName in a descending order, okay, just for checking how our select statement runs. Like this is perfectly a normal command and it will run if we use this, okay, here. So let me show you. It will run and it will definitely bring out records according to the name and whatever it has to bring, okay. So here I declared a cursor and what I did is cursor name is select whatever columns I want. You can jumble this also. You can say location comes first before the D name and all that stuff. Whatever order you want, that's no problem. It's for now we'll just keep it in the same order as in the table. Okay, and then we wrote this cursor. Okay. Now, what we need is next thing, as I said, we need to open the cursor in the program, right? So what we'll do, open cursor name. Cursor name is this, okay? Now, once you open the cursor, what you will do is you will fetch, okay? Fetch cursor. Now, what you have to do is into a variable, okay? Because in memory, you have to keep this somewhere, right? Whatever data coming, you have to keep it in somewhere. And cursor is going to bring one row at a time. I mean, it brings a bunch, but it will handle it one row at a time. So let's say, for example, DEPT underscore row is where we are going to keep our department record. And we already learned that we can say DEPT colon, percentile row type. We already know this declaration. Okay. Now what we are doing is we'll say DEPT underscore row and we'll put it in this particular variable. So one row comes in. Okay. Then what we'll do here is we'll display that dbms underscore output dot put underscore line. I told you in the first day of PL SQL, we'll be using this dbms underscore put line a lot of times. I told you about that. So we'll say, okay, what is that we're going to display now is the department number. Okay. So first of all, it is DEPT underscore row, and we are going to convert this to char because I know that this is a number. Okay. To char of row dot DEPTNO. That is how you refer to the column inside the row type. Okay. Concatenate it with, let's say, for example, DEPT underscore row dot DName. Okay. Or you can display some other format. Let's say, for example, I want to show location first and then DEPT underscore row. First what we'll do is we'll use this and we'll see if it even displays DEPT DName. Okay. DName. That's how we will display. And then finally, we have to close the cursor. Sorry, let's just close this cursor. Okay, always a good idea to close it. So let's run it and see what happens. Okay, when I run this, okay, it shows you some output here. Okay, what I will do is I will additionally add few spaces just to keep it in a cleaner format. What we'll do here is we'll say add few spaces. Okay, and then when I run this again, second time, you can see it looks much better because it's little cleaner than the previous output. So let's explain. What is happening here is we fetch one row Okay. And then we display the output here. We display the output and then we close it, right? We are not actually doing more processing, meaning we are not printing more rows. We are only printing the first row because cursor always goes to the first row and it fetches the first row and it is waiting. Now, it doesn't know to run through all the rows, right? You have to write some other logic here. So let's say, for example, I will just loop. Okay. I will just loop and keep printing this and loop. Okay. Now also what we'll do, because you're going to fetch the next row. First time you're going to fetch the first row, but then you're going to fetch the next row. Okay. So when you do this, see what happens. Okay. So here I just added a loop. I'm printing the row and then fetching the next row and then being in the loop. I'm not exiting out of it. Okay. So now let's run this code and see what happens. It prints some stuff. Okay. And actually, if you remember earlier, we saw this error. It basically comes out with a buffer overflow error. Okay. We saw this when we did some loops program. And here what happened is, if you notice clearly, it actually went from the first row, second row, third row, and so on until it reached the 6 departments are done. You can see here there are only 6 departments. So here New York accounting is the last row. You can see here 10 accounting New York is the last row. Once it printed that, it stayed in the loop because there is nothing else to fetch. It kept on printing that first row. Okay, and you can see here there are lots of those printed. So how do we exit when there is nothing else found? Like say when you reach to the last line, how do you exit? Okay. So here we have to say, okay, we try to fetch and say exit when. Okay. We have to put some condition. That's what we saw with the loop, right? We have to exit when there is no more data. So what we'll do is we'll say in the department cursor, once you run through all the rows, you'll say percentile. Okay. Here, this is interesting. What you'll say not found. That's how you will say if I don't find any more rows in the cursor, then I want to exit. Okay. So let's clear this screen and rerun this code. And what happens is now exactly it prints whatever specific number of rows. Is that all cool? So what we did here is we opened it, we fetched the data into a particular variable. A variable here is the row type variable. And then we said, okay, enter into the loop, print the data, and then fetch the next row. And if at all there was error, then exit. Okay. Error meaning if there is no more data inside the cursor, then exit. Okay. Now we will add one small logic here. I just want to show you there is another thing you can do. What if there is no data at all in the table, right? There is no single row, then what you will do? So that condition we never covered. So what we'll do here is, so remember here we fetched. So there is a variable called if data found inside the cursor, then then print. Okay. And if. So we are only printing the data if the first row exists. And then it says, okay, continue to fetch and exit when it is in that loop. Okay. So we added just extra condition here called department cursor percentile found. Let's see if there is any difference when I write this particular code. So in this case, there is no problem or no errors. It looks exactly same because there is some data in the table. Why I use this particular extra thing is I just wanted to show you there are two ways to check cursor about its status. We'll say cursor is the data found here or not found. So these are the two conditions you can check for a cursor. Okay. So let me clear this output, close this. I want to show you the full syntax of the cursor. Basically what we did here is a cursor declaration. So cursor always goes with a select statement. So what we did here is a cursor name. This is the cursor name. This is the cursor name here. And we said is a select statement, whatever select you want to. It can be complicated, join, or anything you want to write. Okay. Then we said, okay, where are we going to store the data which is coming out from the cursor? So we can store this way. Then we open the cursor, we fetch data into the variable, or it can be multiple variables. In a second, I'll show you multiple variables. And then we are saying put it in a loop, okay, because I want to show all the rows. I'm processing row by row. And then I say, for example, okay, if you found the data for the first fetch, show the output, and if, then you say fetch the next row. And then you're also checking if there was an error, meaning it cursor reached to the end, it basically does not have any more data, then you're ending the loop by exiting when, okay? Then when you end loop, if you don't have the last row, if you still have rows, then it will continue to go up here and it will say, okay, data found, print it, and then come back here, right? So when I'm on the last row, it basically says, okay, no more data, so there is nothing else to fetch, and it ends the loop and closes the cursor. So close cursor is also very important. Now let's look at another scenario where, let's say for example, here what I did is I picked all the columns. Let's say I don't want all the columns, and also they're not in the order of table. They're like, say for example, I want location first and dname next, and I don't want the department number to show up. Okay. So in that case, what I will do is, instead of using this row type, I will use d v underscore d name, and it is of department dot d name column percentile type. Okay, remember that we already know this part. V underscore location department table. So remember department table dot location percentile type. You can specify this, and I'm not hard coding any data types here. That's how it is, keeping it flexible. Okay. So now when you open cursor, it is same thing, but when you fetch, you're not fetching into department row, but you're fetching into multiple variables now. Okay. So we are fetching it into v underscore location, comma, v underscore dname. Okay. Now our display, this particular display statement changes a little bit. Now what we'll do, first of all, what I want to do is I will just comment out the old code and I will write the new code. That way we will have both to refer to. So v underscore location and also v underscore dname. Okay. And here also what I'll do, I'll keep both the original code and the new code. Now original code looked like dptno, comma, dname, comma, location. That's how it looked like. Okay. So then we declared two more variables. We declared the fetch. We say, okay, cursor found data. Now this is your old DBMS output. What I will do is the new DBMS output will just say we don't have the number. Hold on 1 second. Can you hear me? You hear me? You can you can speak if you can hear me.
Yeah, now it's better.
Okay. So let's resume. Hold on 1 second. And cursor, everything else looks same. So now let's run this, and you can see output looks little different because we are not printing the department number now. And basically we are just printing the two variables. Okay. So let me close this, and if you have any questions, let me know. Here we looked at two different types of ways of writing cursor. What we did was we wrote the general cursor, got the entire row. Then we wrote a cursor, we got only specific columns. And also you can see here, we are not putting it in a row data type. We are putting it in individual columns and then printing those output. Okay. So you can see both your previous and the new style of writing cursor. This is how you can do your cursors manually. Okay. Now, obviously, what you're doing manually here is you're declaring a cursor, you're opening the cursor, you're fetching the cursor, and then you're doing the processing, and then you're closing the cursor on your own. And also, every time you are going to the next row, you're fetching the cursor. Um, so you're manually doing all this. Now, if you remember your for loops, it will declare the variable on its own. It will process the whole for loop increments, and then destroy the variables when it doesn't need and all that. So if you remember that way of doing stuff, then using for loops will be much more powerful for our purpose of writing cursors. So let's say we'll keep this here, okay? And what we'll do is we'll transform this into a for loop. Let's take this into the next screen here. And what we'll do is we'll completely change this and transform this into a cursor for loop. Okay. So what we are doing is, first of all, we did all these things manually. Okay. All these things we did manually. So first method we tried is first method one. Method one was manual cursor handling. Okay. Handling. Then the method two, what we'll do, we'll learn a better method, cursor for loops. Okay. Now this is much more powerful here. What we need to do here is we will have to declare the cursor, obviously. We don't have to open, we don't have to fetch, we don't have to close. Okay. So this will be just a for loop, or let's say cursor for loop. So that's all we need to do for the second method. All we have to do is declare a cursor, cursor for loop. We don't have to open, we don't have to fetch, we don't have to close. Okay. Meaning it is better handling. If you write less code, you can debug quickly and you will be having less errors. Okay. Why do we have to learn both methods? Is because first method existed for years, and then somebody from Oracle said, oh, we can make it better by writing cursor for loops. Then the new method came into picture. We have to learn both methods because you might see both used in the field. Like when you go to development, you might see both methods, and you have to know both methods. Okay. So let's take this, we'll keep this original code here, and let's go to the second window here, and we'll start hacking the same code, and output we are going to see exactly same. Like, so for example, we have this department table and we want to display the output. Okay. So how do we do cursor for loops, first of all? So what we'll do here is, okay, so obviously we need to declare our cursor. Okay. Now, how do we declare our cursor is easy. What we'll do is we'll use the first method. We'll declare our cursor dept, and we'll say get all the columns, and then you have the some order by, and then we are going to use the row type. So we'll get rid of this. As I said, we don't have to open, we don't have to fetch, we don't have to do anything, right? But what we'll do here is we are going to write a for loop for. Okay. Now, here is the interesting thing. We don't even have to declare this data type here. So for D, okay, in, you remember the syntax for loop, we say I in 1 to 10. So here we are going to say, instead of D in numbers, we'll say D in cursor loop. Okay. So now we don't have to check if it found data, if it did not find data, all that stuff. If you want, you can check. We'll leave it there. Okay. So then what we'll do is we want to print output. Obviously, we want to print something out. Now let me show you how we'll do the output part later on. And also we don't have to check this condition. We'll just do a print as we want. We are not going to fetch, not going to exit. We'll just end loop and we close. Okay. So this is how a cursor for loop will look like. Now, obviously we want to print output. Now here you see how it is going to declare the cursor for you. I mean all the variable for you. So what we'll do d dot dname, let's say for example, and concatenate it with d dot location. These are the two things I want to print. Okay. So let's start with this and let me show you what happens. So here I'm selecting all the data. Okay. First of all, let's run this and review then review that later. So what we'll do, we'll run it and you can see exactly the output came out, right? Whatever you wanted to see came out. How does it work? So we declared a cursor, whatever columns we want, we said, okay, select all. And then we said, okay, declare a for loop. Okay, so D is the variable in department cursor loop and then print everything we want to print and end the loop. We did not open, we did not fetch, we did not close, we did not do anything. And also we did not check whether we reached to the last row or not and all that stuff. It is all taken care by the for loop. What I want to show you here is now, let's say for example, I don't want all the columns. I want only location and department number or okay, let's do the department number, DEPTNO. Okay. And then what we'll do, we'll just leave everything else same way and we'll run it. So I'm expecting error. Okay. So here is the error. What it says is component dname must be declared because we are saying print d.dname. See what happened automatically. This particular for loop will declare the D according to what you're selecting. Okay. So you cannot print dname because it's not declaring the entire row, but it is declaring based on what you used in your select statement. So now let's say, for example, I will say location and print department number. These are the only two things which we are fetching using our select statement. So D must already have these two variables. Okay. So let's clear the screen and run it again. So you see how it works. Now it is so dynamic that you don't even have to declare any variables. It will know what to declare, and the D is a row type of whenever you change this list, it will accordingly change here. Okay. So now let's say, for example, you can write, let me show you. So this you understood, right? Cursor for loops. This is a very straightforward syntax. Now compare it with your old syntax and the new syntax. New syntax looks much more clean and I can do better stuff here. Like say, for example, I want to declare another cursor. I will say cursor, okay, emp underscore cursor is select ename, comma, let's say for example, what is the job title from employee table, all of them. Okay. So then what I'll do is I'll write a very simple cursor for loop for, okay, E in emp underscore cursor loop will say something and loop. Okay. And loop. And here I will say dbms underscore output dot put underscore line. What I want to print is I want to print the e dot ename and concatenate it with e dot job. These are the two fields I'm getting. So then what I will do is I will just clean the screen and run it. So here in the output, you see first it printed all the departments and then it printed all the employee names. Any questions? So far so good. We are able to do more in a very small program because it is all cursor for loops. Okay. Now there is something called cursor parameters. parameterized cursors. Okay, we can open a specific parameterized cursor. So let me give you one example of that. I want to show you one more thing here. And obviously it can be used where um, you can open a cursor within another cursor. So let me find an example. Give me 1 second, and then we'll work on that. I'm still here. I'm checking something. Give me 1 second. What we can do is, okay, so why don't you practice these things and we can come back tomorrow. I will show you cursor parameters, like how do we pass parameter to a cursor, and based on that we can write a little bit better code. Like say, how would you show, let's say for example, we'll display the department detail, let's say one Chicago 30, and then show all the employees who work in that department, and then show Dallas 20, then we show all the department, all the people who work in the department. So we'll do that tomorrow. So far, what we covered in this session was we did user defined exceptions, and we worked on cursors, explicit cursors, and also cursor for loops. What I will do is I will take this cursor for loops example to a new level by adding a parameter to the cursor. So we'll be working on a similar code like this, but we'll get different output. So we'll have multiple cursors, we'll handle them, and we'll continue tomorrow. So let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, we'll end the session here. Okay, then good night.